All right, everybody, welcome back to the eHunter Newscast. We're going to do another podcast similar to what we did recently, where we talked about Utah and some of the new things and changes and just kind of little tidbits about Utah, but we're going to talk about Colorado tonight. So we're actually going to switch roles. Seth's going to be asking me the questions because I'm a resident of Colorado. Doesn't mean I'm the best person to be asking these questions, but I will do my best to answer them. But Seth, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, how are you?
Doing excellent. Glad that we finally are doing this. We've been trying to do this for 3 weeks now, haven't we?
Yeah, linking up has been a little bit difficult with everything going on. So
life has been crazy lately. I hope it settles. Actually, it's not going to settle down. So, oh goodness. Well, before we get started, as always, we want to thank our sponsors, Vortex Optics. They sponsor everything that we do at eHunter. You'll see them up on our website. You can click there and check out their stuff. You can go to their website, vortexoptics.com. They just have some amazing stuff. We're using some of their newer products in the field, doing some testing. You guys can check out our YouTube videos and articles on some of their products. Super thankful for them and the relationship and partnership that we have with them. They are awesome dudes. So special shout out to Sawyer over there. He's been really awesome. And then also shout out to our other sponsor for the podcast, which is Phoneskope. I'm pretty sure most everybody's familiar with Phoneskope. I use them all the time. Seth, are you a Phoneskope guy?
Yeah. I actually just got one recently, so been using it. Prior to that, I kind of used a jank one, and it's night and day how much better Phoneskope is than what I was using. So,
dude, it's funny how Phoneskope has evolved over the years. So, little history here. We're going to do a little story time just to start this podcast off. I was it's actually mainly my brother, but I kind of helped out. Back in the day when Cheston, who owns Phoneskope and started Phoneskope, he had a online social media type hunting social media thing. It was called Track My Trophies, and loved it. It was a pretty cool thing. And then he kind of went away from that, went to Phoneskope. So I was kind of one of the first ones to get a Phoneskope, and it was okay. It worked. Sure. But man, they've come a long way. Gosh, they're amazing. So for those of you guys that aren't familiar with Phoneskope, because I know we have hunters from all across the world that listen to our podcast, it's basically an adapter. You have a case that you put your phone in. There's an adapter that goes on whatever optic you have, and they have an adapter for every single optic out there. Basically put them together, marry them together, put it on your optic, and you can take pictures and video right through your spotting scope, your binocular, your monoscope, whatever. Did I say that right? Monocular. That's what I meant to say.
Monocular.
Yeah. Anyways, takes amazing video and pictures. You can check out our social media pages. We've got a lot of pictures up there that have been taken through a Phoneskope. So I appreciate them being a sponsor for the podcast this month. All right, Seth. Well, let's jump into Colorado. Like I said, I will do my best to answer questions. I've got my notes here. So my buddy Tyson, if you're listening, Tyson, hopefully I got my notes here and get it correct, because he gave us crap on our Utah one. Hey, actually.
Well, I don't know if we ever claim to be experts. We try our best, and we do research, but every once in a while, dates and things flip by. If everybody knew everything, they wouldn't need that big old brochure or proclamation to give you all the rules, right?
Exactly, and that proclamation wouldn't change completely every year, too. I swear it's different every single year. But you're right. I mean, and we were only off on just a few dates and things like that. So, but we got it corrected. We're good.
Yeah,
but actually, funny story, again, story time here, the first of this podcast. I was talking to Tyson the other day about Colorado, and this is something that was kind of interesting to, I thought I knew this for sure, or thought I knew this, but then he kind of, solidified it with me. So he was asking about group applications. A lot of people, especially non-residents, put in for group applications in Colorado. And
right.
He was wondering if, okay, so you put in, there's 4 of you that put in. If one person had to withdraw, does that mean everybody has to withdraw? And actually, that's not true. If all 4 of you draw out, one of the people can turn back their tag and doesn't penalize the other ones, which I thought that was kind of cool.
That is interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I put in for groups for both elk and deer, and I've always wondered that, and I thought I figured that would be the case, but yeah, we found out for sure that he called the CPW and that was the answer. So kind of cool.
Nice, nice.
So I'll turn it over to you, and you can ask questions or make points, whatever you want to do.
All right. Well, I will get to be the griller now. You have to answer all my questions up to snuff. Um, I guess we'll just start off with kind of the intro that we did in Utah on the Utah podcast. So what's new in Colorado, Taryn? Anything exciting and pressing that's come up recently?
So yeah, there's a lot that's going on in Colorado, and I'm going to start with something that's actually it's not new for this year. It was introduced a couple years ago, and we've all known it's happening. Is the dates moving back on each of the hunts? And like I said, this has happened for a couple of years now, and I think we've got one more year in it that the dates will move back. So if you're a third season hunter, you're basically hunting the old fourth season dates, and fourth season. Well, fourth season's so late now. Fourth season is basically going to be.
It's a post rut hunt almost. It's a migration hunt. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Anybody that's hunted deer in Colorado, the deer, for the most part, I've hunted deer here for quite a few years now. Seem to start rutting a little bit earlier than in other states that I've been in. For example, Utah, and so yeah, I agree with you. It's almost a post rut hunt, which. Good or bad? I don't. I honestly don't think it's going to be that good anymore, personally.
I think it would really depend on the weather.
Hmm.
If you get a ton of snow, a lot of those places you're planning on getting to might be very difficult to get to, and a lot of deer may push into their true winter range, which a lot of their true winter range is on private land in Colorado. So it may become a very difficult hunt. And then if you don't get any weather, it kind of depends on the deer in each unit if they're going to get rutting or not. If you get nothing, it's really going to be more of a coin flip than I feel like it has been in the past.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, if you're a second season hunter or want to hunt second season, that's the old third season dates, which third season Colorado has always been kind of everybody's favorite time to go hunt deer. Maybe not favorite time, but you could actually draw a tag and go hunt. So I know we've already put in for the draws here in Colorado, and that date's already passed. But those people that have thought about hunting second season, it's probably a really smart idea with like I said, with those dates moving back, and then also kind of like what I said with the rut here in Colorado, it seems to be a little bit earlier than other states. So second season actually might be a pretty cool season this year.
And it could be for sure.
So that's a big one. And again, I think we've got one more year in that for those dates to go back. In this podcast, I'm going to kind of share my personal thoughts on things, so you guys can judge me for or however you want. I'm disappointed that the Colorado Parks and Wildlife is doing this, and we're going to talk about a few other things that I feel like they're doing to really decimate the herd. But honestly, I feel like hunting in Colorado is going to change in the next 2 years, next 3 years. Hunting deer in Colorado is not going to be what we've known it to be in the past. I feel like they're trying to wipe out all the older age class bucks in the state. I feel like they're actually kind of hurting our what we know as Colorado deer hunting. Like I said, there's a couple things that are going to also impact that, but boy, moving those dates back, it's going to decimate those bigger bucks. And so if you're wanting to get big bucks in Colorado, you better start doing it in the next couple of years. There's a couple other things that have changed, that are new. In fact, we wrote an article recently. Seth, I believe actually you wrote the article, but talking about the mandatory CWD testing in Colorado for deer and elk. Now, it's mandatory in a lot of different units. It's not every single unit, but it's it's the majority of them, and so that's a big part of it. In the past, we've had that it was kind of a voluntary thing. You either did or you didn't. But now in those units, it is mandatory. It's free to do, so it's not hard to do. I've done it. I did it last year or maybe 2 years ago, and it was just a matter of stopping at the check station, they checked it out, did their stuff, and I mean it didn't take long at all. So that will be mandatory in a couple different units, or a lot of units now.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the sorry, but to cut you off, but that was my first experience with it was actually this year in this last hunting season in Utah. They had a check station where we hunt. So first
Nice.
experience ever doing that. So
It honestly for me it's been a peace of mind, I guess, more than anything that they checked it. And not that they've never linked it to humans or having an effect on humans, but it's just nice to know that you know your
it's
animal's good to
clean.
go. Yeah. And it's becoming
Right.
pretty prevalent in Colorado, the testing that they've done. And that's another thing, again, this is Taryn's personal opinion, but they're using moving these dates back and I was going to say destroying, I'll use the word destroying the older age class of deer in Colorado to get rid of CWD. And I don't think that's really worth doing. CWD numbers have gone up lately, but I mean, similar to coronavirus, they've tested a lot more lately. So, of course, the numbers are going to go up. Just like coronavirus, the more you test, of course, the numbers are going to go up. In the past, history, they never tested for it, so they didn't have the numbers that they have now. So, we've probably killed deer and elk for years and years and years that had CWD, and we never even knew it, and honestly didn't even care about it. But they're using this whole moving the dates back and other few things to destroy that older age class of deer because they think it's going to take away the
It's
CWD.
it's supposedly more prevalent in older age class animals, and that's why they think they need to do it. And it seems like some of the data out of Colorado and Wyoming, it is centralized more towards bucks than does even.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest thing with all that, and I didn't want to get off on the CWD tangent so early in the podcast, but I think my biggest thing is I agree with Taryn in that it's probably been prevalent for ever and ever. And I personally feel like if we're smart about what we're doing while we harvest our animals, we'll be okay. Because the only precedent they have to worry about CWD is that it is similar to what mad cow disease was in Britain. And mad cow jumped to humans in Britain, but they got it under control fairly quickly because of the cuts of meat that were the main components of that. And that comes back to we as hunters, we've always been told you got to use the whole thing, don't waste any of the animal, which is understandable, but we do need to be smart about what we are eating. We can't, and I know I'm going to rile some people up, but we can't be the guys that go, okay, let's cut the tongue out, let's cut head meat off, let's take lymph nodes and upper neck meat near the spinal cord. If you just don't take those pieces of meat, the chances of it jumping from a rump roast or the ribs or any of that is so much smaller. It's just a much safer way to harvest your meat.
Yeah, and kind of going back to your comment about it's more prevalent in bucks than does, and I'd love to see the numbers of testing. How many bucks have they tested versus how many does? Because I would imagine that a lot more bucks have been tested. So, of course, your numbers are
Correct.
going to be skewed because they're testing more of those than they are does.
Right.
So,
Right.
I almost feel like they're. Sorry, this is very opinionated. So those that are listening, hopefully you guys have a similar opinion that I do. But I feel like the numbers they're getting the statistics that they're looking for basically on it. So
Right.
it's
And then
interesting.
Montana, not to jump off, but Montana just did the same thing with whitetails.
Mm,
They had a whole new hunt put in place to kill off and focus more on whitetails in a couple of regions or game management units, whatever you want to call them, in the state because both bucks and does were testing pretty highly. Um, so they went through and killed off a bunch more more. Sorry, they killed a bunch more does on these units on these extended hunts, and it came back that they were tested something like 26% of the whitetails they tested, even the does had it. Um, and I guess my biggest thing is if it's as deadly as they claim, and they're trying to thin the density, how were the deer living through it in the last couple years. And then maybe they weren't. I'd like to see the data behind it. Maybe they were finding tons of dead whitetails in Montana.
But
But
that would have been evident. You would have heard about that. I mean, goodness gracious, look at the
right,
news that we write about. We write about every little thing on our website. So if that would have happened,
yeah,
it'd be on our site.
yeah. And the only state that's reported any kind of mass sickness or die off enough that they returned hunter permits was North
North
Dakota.
Dakota, yeah.
Uh, yeah, and that's the only one. And granted, the densities there were obviously pretty thick with whitetails, and it was what whitetails that were affected. They didn't return mule deer permits because the mule deer in North Dakota are more sparse.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I get trying to manage it, but I kind of agree with you. I mean, you can, even if you guys want to read more about it, I mean, you can even read about the management system. They started in the early 2000s, in and around the Red Feather area of Colorado. They slaughtered every deer there. I mean, they increased doe permits to an incredible amount, shot all the bucks, and basically killed it to nothing, and let the herd regrow. And now they're finding that didn't do anything because they still test at almost the same level of CWD in the region. And there's a lot of studies going on right now that's linking it to it being parvo like in dogs that stay in the ground and the plants and stuff of the environment for extended periods of time.
That's wild. That is so wild.
So
Oh man. I don't know. I listen to a lot of people that are, very knowledgeable with mule deer. And the way that they, talk about this, like it had to have been around. And I've also talked to, CW or CPW officials, biologists, and you can tell in the way that they talk about CWD that they're not. I don't know if they fully support what the management plan is right now for Colorado with the way they're managing their deer. I think most of them in the back of their minds are like, I probably wouldn't do this now. But if you were to talk to them off record, they'd be like, it's scary what's going on. But they've got a job, they've got to protect their job. It's the livelihood for their family, so they've got to do what whoever's pulling the strings tells them to do. So,
right.
anyways, that's enough about CWD. I just it's a bummer. It really is. But that is a change for Colorado. Is there is mandatory testing. So we're going to see those numbers go up this year. This will be a record year for CWD in Colorado, and there'll be a lot of red flags, and there'll be a lot of articles on our website about it, and all that. But
Yeah, and
keep,
and last year was the same way. I
mhm,
covered a ton of articles last year on CWD, and even overflowing into this year, where the Southwest region has all of a sudden started to see quote unquote record amounts of deer with CWD, but it's because they're increasing testing,
yeah,
and it's going to take that increased testing a few years at a level before they actually get a set data point of they can really look and say, okay, we're testing X amount of deer and the prevalence is here, at this percentage point.
mhm,
Um, and it's all over the board depending. I mean, Wyoming's been dealing with it for years too. There's certain sections in Wyoming that they claim the prevalence is 40% of the deer have it. And you would think the deer would just be dropping like flies.
yeah,
So I like to say, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a epidemiologist or whatever. That's
epidemiologist,
hillbilly.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're gonna say it better than I am, but I don't understand it all, and I won't claim to. But it just seems like to me, if it was as deadly as they claim, there would be deer bodies just scattered across the landscape constantly in some of these regions.
But one thing for sure that is and can be deadly is hunting. That's what
Correct.
hunting is, and so you put rifle hunting at the most ideal point in hunting. Right during the rut, you put rifle hunting right then where the most tags are, and oh, holy
And the
moly,
and the thing is though, for I mean, geez, 20 years, their deer herd had been able to handle it. I mean,
hmm
they've had that hunting place for a long time.
hmm
And
well,
and up until this increase, I mean, sorry, up until this increase, there's a reason Colorado was a destination, man. They've killed more Boone and Crockett or record book deer in that state than even the two Canadian provinces. You know, they were putting some world-class deer on the ground because of the time of year, obviously, but the deer were able to sustain it, and year after year, you were still killing incredible quality deer.
Well, for the past 20 years, you've had one season that was that at that level. Third
True.
season wasn't quite there yet. At the end of the third season, they may be starting to get into that rut. And I remember that last weekend of third season was the one you looked forward to. You would pass on everything all week long, wait for that last week, and be like, okay, magic's going to happen right here. So it was always just that one season. But now, second, third, and fourth are all going to touch the rut, and you're going to decimate those animals. And going back to your point that they're going to need several years. I think you said 3 to 5 years, something like that, of statistics with this CWD testing, to really make decisions and make changes. Well, in 3 to 5 years, I really don't see the deer herd in Colorado being what we've known it to be. I think it will be destroyed.
Right. It'll take some time to recover if they even decide to do that. They may keep it this harvest level the same. And going back, my only experience with Colorado is obviously my dad guided there for years and years. And then we hunted it when I was a youth hunter back in 2001, third season. And our third season hunt was great. The most of the bucks were in with the does, starting to show rut activity. We had a great hunt. A lot of guys took deer, nothing massive, but we saw a couple really nice bucks that we couldn't make it work out. But it was still a blast. And then there was tons of deer, and they were starting to rut. And they've been able to manage that. But like you said, they've moved dates back. They've increased harvest. That's the biggest thing. I think moving dates is one thing, but when you increase permits, you're going to increase harvest. It's just we're too effective as a management tool. And so when you do that, you're going to lower deer populations, which is their plan initially, until they can figure out what to do with the deer and CWD.
Yep, that's their plan, and that's their plan is to get rid of the higher age class because we already talked about it. That's where it's more prevalent, and so it is accomplishing what they want it to accomplish. I'm just very nervous about the long term effect that it'll have. But one thing I will say for those listening, if you have a lot of points in Colorado, I would recommend really looking at what units you can possibly get into in the next year or two. That if again 20 points, something like that, 15 to 20 points or more, I would be looking to see where you can burn those points and get hunting. And then also at the same time, there's so much opportunity for deer hunting in Colorado, and so take advantage of that while we have it. It is a great place to hunt, and like Seth just talked about, I mean, it's the mecca of deer hunting. It really is that destination for deer hunting. I've loved it. I've loved hunting in Colorado ever since I started, and will probably hunt the rest of my life here in Colorado. I mean, it is so much fun to hunt. And there is a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, and you'll hear this. A lot of people that know Colorado or spend time in Colorado or hunt separate states as well as Colorado will tell you, maybe not after these changes, but prior to it, that state is a deer factory. It had everything they need to not only grow big deer, but grow a lot of deer. Even with how high the state's elk numbers are, and you hear people, like my home state of Utah, they argue that the deer and elk are in direct competition with each other, and that's why the two herds have to be kind of managed to get a carrying capacity. Well, whatever Utah's is, Colorado crushes it. Obviously they get more water, better habitat maybe, but to have the amount of deer and elk they've had in that state is pretty outstanding.
And as soon as I walk out of my house, I'm gonna be getting hit with tomatoes or just shot probably for all this stuff I'm talking about with Colorado, because nobody wants anybody else to come to Colorado and hunt. But
well, I mean, if that's the case, they need to read the news, because guess what? Everybody's coming.
It's no secret. It is no secret. I don't think these days. Hop on social media for a minute and you'll figure that out. Seth, as far as any other changes, nothing really crazy. Turkey licenses qualified you to put in for the secondary draw this year. Um, the leftover licenses and the over the counter license will go on sale the same day. I believe that's August 3rd this year. I think 9 a.m. August 3rd is when those go on sale. And that's actually another thing probably ought to just mention. One thing great about Colorado is it's an opportunity state. There's a lot of leftover licenses that you can purchase, and then there's a lot of over the counter stuff. And I think when we get into the elk conversation, we need to talk about the over the counter stuff. If you're an eastern hunter, you want to hunt elk. Honestly, I don't know that you can beat Colorado's over the counter opportunities. There's so many units that you can go to. We can maybe talk here in a little bit about some of the better units that you can choose. But anyways, those will both go on sale the same day, which again it's August 3rd, and I believe it's at 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. Mountain Time that those go on sale. A couple of the changes. There's a couple of units that the Mooses have a quota in the draw for 2021, or a limited quota that they've changed just because of fires and different things that have affected it. So you can check out the brochure and read the details on that. There's a couple of closures. Nothing. I don't really think anything that's really going to impact a lot of hunters. There's a few units that have closed, either the entire unit or just part of the units, due to fires or due to numbers, different things like that. So, other than that, no other main or big changes outside. I mean, those first few that we talked about are kind of the big ones.
Right. Yeah, and you know, it's understandable because, like I say, every state's going to have changes every year. It's just we wanted to touch on these big ones so that you guys going into it can get a grasp of what's happening in this state if you're planning on applying or grabbing an over the counter permit or whatever for Colorado. But Taryn, we kind of touched on it briefly, but let's segue into deer hunting in Colorado. Let's talk about maybe some of the opportunities, lower point barriers and what Colorado has going on that way, and then maybe we'll transition into some of the better high point units.
Okay. So the great thing about Colorado is kind of what I mentioned before. There's so much opportunity to hunt deer here. Other areas have like a general unit, then limited entry units. Those special units that really carry like the best deer. And I guess similar in Colorado, there's certain units that carry the better deer. But here we have an archery season, a muzzleloader season. There's no first rifle season for deer. That's only for elk. So if you're looking at deer in Colorado and you're putting in for the draw and you're like, okay, I'm going to put in for first rifle, and it doesn't pop up, that's because it doesn't exist. Those dates don't exist for it. But then there is second, third, and fourth seasons for Colorado rifle deer. Let me just read off the dates. I wrote them down just because I wanted to let you guys kind of know when they are. So second rifle is October 30th through November 7th. So you're already into November on second rifle, which is amazing to me. Third rifle is November 13th through the 19th. And then fourth rifle is November 24th through the 28th. So right at Thanksgiving, basically. So tons and tons of opportunity. And then another thing that's cool about Colorado is, so if you're not familiar with Colorado, the way that the geography works in the state, on the western side, west of I-25, it's very mountainous, high peaks. That's where all your 14ers are. The Rocky Mountains. I guess that's easily said. Rocky Mountains, very mountainous. But then once you get east of I-25, it's plains. A lot of private land, but it's Kansas. It's flat as a pancake. But there's a lot of opportunity to hunt deer out there, and I think it's a very underutilized and underappreciated hunting opportunity in Colorado that people don't take advantage of. You can do archery on those plains hunts. The dates for those are October 30th through November 9th. However, there are a few of them that are different. In fact, there's some of them that last all the way through November and December that you can actually go down and hunt archery on those plains hunts. A buddy of mine actually did that last year. I think he's actually going to do it again this year. I won't tell you guys what unit, but pretty cool opportunity because then you're hunting deer in Colorado with your bow during the rut. I mean, that's such a cool um, opportunity to have here. So again, lots of opportunity to hunt in multiple places throughout the state.
Yeah, and being a non-resident looking at hunting Colorado, the biggest advice I can get is look over some units, pick one, and look at the seasons that are offered and available. Because I think one point Tarrant didn't touch on is some of them, not very many, but some of them do offer a what they call an early second rifle,
Yeah.
and I think you're hunting them in like late September.
Hmm. Yep.
With a rifle, mostly high country hunting, but you're hunting high country with a rifle before the other rifle hunters get a chance at them, before the deer have started to transition towards that winter range or that migration season. Um, and pick them and look at them, because even some of these units, you can look at a unit and fourth season's 27 points or 25 points or whatever, and a second season's only 4 points, or some of them are even as low as 1 or 2 points on a really good unit for fourth season. And yeah, you're hunting them earlier and not in that peak rut, but if you can locate a buck, I mean, you're going to have first crack at him. And Colorado does a great job at providing opportunity. Low point barrier units are out there, and it doesn't take much effort to find them. Find a unit to hunt. And then another point on that plains hunt that Taryn brought up, like you said, it is widely private. There are a few units with some national grasslands, I think, that you can access or get to, but by and large, you're going to want to try to find a landowner or someone that's going to allow you to have some trespass access. But it's also another great opportunity.
And you can find that access pretty easily. Honestly, a Google search will help you with that. If you draw a tag in a certain unit and you're trying to get access to different places, you can Google search it, and you can find ranches and phone numbers to those ranches. People do it all the time, and they call in and get the information to get those. Usually, it's going to require a trespass fee. That ranges. I don't want to dare throw out numbers because that could be completely different depending on where you're at.
Yeah,
but yeah, pay those trespass fees and you
yeah,
can get on
from
those.
very easy manageable prices to some very expensive prices, but that probably indicates the quality of wildlife and animals too a lot of the time.
Yeah, you get what you pay for sure. Another cool opportunity that a lot of people don't think about in Colorado is whitetail. So we do have whitetail here. In fact, we were hunting third rifle 3 years ago, and we're looking on this private land and just kind of looking at all these deer, and saw a couple bucks. And in the middle of all these mule deer is this whitetail buck. And I was praying that thing came off of the private land. He wasn't a huge buck, but how cool it would have been to get that whitetail. But so there actually are some over-the-counter whitetail opportunities here in Colorado. They're late season or late rifle opportunities. Let's see, the season dates, I wrote those down. So season dates are the whole month of December, December 1st to December 31st. They're only in certain units that you can hunt them. They're actually here close to my home and kind of going south from me. But it's an either sex license, so you can shoot either one. I will admit the the units that you can get a whitetail over the counter license, you're not going to find a ton of whitetail. You'll kind of like what I found in that hunt that there's all these mule deer and all of a sudden there's this one whitetail buck. But still, you have a whitetail tag in your pocket and are out there pursuing whitetail. And again, it's either sex, late rifle, December 1st through December 31st. Just another cool opportunity.
Nice. Yeah, so the biggest thing is with Colorado, if you want to go hunt, there is the ability to hunt. Don't feel like it's some overwhelming thing and you've got to, try to find the perfect unit. There are plenty of units that you can get into fairly easy, maybe a year or two. Some you might be able to get in on that 0 points even, but by and large 1 or 2 points will get you hunting at least in the state for deer.
Hey, sorry to cut you off, but that's a good point. There are a lot of 0 point units, not a lot, but there's several 0 point units in Colorado that you'll shoot some of the biggest deer of your life. And I almost compare it to general units in other areas, like Utah, for example. In Utah, you can hunt general units, and if you're a resident, I guess when I was a resident, you could hunt it every year. Can you still hunt general every year as a resident?
Not rifle hunting probably. If you
Ah,
wanted to bow hunt or muzzleloader hunt, maybe. But we've got some serious point creep going on with our general season stuff. But bow hunting pretty much every year. Yeah.
so kind of similar to that, and you can find some big deer in the general units in Utah, but similarly here in Colorado, you can find these units that are 0 point units. Um, and sorry, I'm going to kind of go on a little bit of a tangent here, so hopefully everybody can keep up with me. You can even find second choice units with 0 points and be able to build up points. Or you just get a preference point for your first choice, and on a second choice, get a tag. But 0 point units out there that you can get some, you know, great deer. For example, we hunted a 0 point unit a few years ago, and we pulled a 185 and a 190-inch deer off of them. I mean, just there's so much opportunity here in Colorado, and that those 0 point units are pretty awesome. And you can find those. You can hop on the CPW's website and see which units you were able to draw with 0 points, and do a little bit of research. And all these guys, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out to us. Again, we may not be the highest professional that but we can definitely answer some questions for you. So if you're looking at putting in for Colorado, feel free to reach out. But I did also want to talk about the second choice and third choice options that you have in Colorado. So a lot of people, and this is what they do, is first choice they put in for a preference point, and then they put their second choice in a unit that's a 0 point unit. They're able to build their points in the state and also still be able to hunt deer, and which is a pretty cool opportunity. Not every state's like that, but you can continue to build those points each and every year and still be able to hunt every year and hunt pretty dang good units. So another cool thing that Colorado has going for them.
Yeah, and to spin off of Taryn's point about the 0 point units is uh, starting back in 2010, my uncle and his buddies hunted a 0 point unit every year from 2010 to 2005. The smallest buck they took was a 145. Every buck was better than that. And they never took a real giant, but every year they either missed great big bucks or saw 180s 190s moving through, and this was right at when Onyx was starting to get in the game, and none of them older guys really understood it. And talking to my uncle now, he's like, man, if we would have known exactly where the private land parcels were, we probably could have killed some even better bucks that we just weren't sure of where to get to. So they're out there, and every unit, like I say, it might get sketchy here in the next few years as they start killing age class, but every unit's got the potential to produce a beautiful deer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
So we covered deer pretty well.
You know, Sorry to cut you off again, Seth, but real quick, if you're looking at Colorado and you're like, oh, I want to build some points and hunt some amazing units in Colorado, if you're looking for kind of some of the better units, I will say the northwest corner of Colorado is they've got a pretty good deer herd up there. It's going to take you 20 plus points to draw it, but that's kind of that's one of the nicest areas for deer and elk. We'll talk about that in a minute, I'm sure. But if you're wanting to build to that 20 plus point range to hunt the monsters, that's a great one. There's a few other sneaky areas that produce some pretty good deer. They're probably that 10 to 15 point range. But if you get around the Gunnison Basin, some of those units, like I said, they're going to take quite a few more points, that 10 to 15 range to draw them. But they'll produce some pretty good deer. Also around that Eagle area, there's a few units, again, kind of that same point range, but yeah, there's some really nice deer that come out of there. So if you're trying to build points and you're looking for areas that you want to kind of focus on as you get to those higher point numbers, I would say I would focus on those ones if you're like, oh yeah, that 10 to 15 point range is kind of where I want to get to and get a really nice deer. I'd probably say that Gunnison Basin Eagle range would be a great place to go if you're wanting to build that 20 plus range. That northwest corner of Colorado is it's pretty nice.
Yeah, and to go with that, Taryn brought up the Eagle area. If you look at record book bucks, man, that Eagle area has produced. It's got the genetics, that's for
It
sure.
does.
They
It's just
might
not
hit
as.
some.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say they might not hit it every year. There might
Yeah.
have some weather issues or something like that hurts the herd. But the genetics are there, and they've been there for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And the density of those big bucks, you're not, there's some of those areas that have a higher density of those bigger bucks, but you're absolutely right, Seth. The genetics are there. And actually, I mean, if you look across, gosh, a lot of that area,
Right.
going north to south, you'll find the genetics. I mean, all the way down into, the Pagosa Springs area, Durango area. If you kind of follow that line up through the Continental Divide area, they've got some pretty dang good genetics.
Well, and another one that kind of gets forgotten. What you have to realize is, especially if you can hunt it early, all those units on the very southern, southwest end of Colorado, a lot of those deer are migrating into some of the best units in New Mexico
Yes.
in the November season. So if you can get an earlier hunt for those southern units, you're talking about hunting some of New Mexico's best deer, but they're actually on the Colorado side. So
Yeah, honestly, for archery hunters, that's a great place to go and great point, Seth. If you, yeah, well, and even like any early hunt, but hunting would be that'd be a fantastic place to archery hunt down there.
right. Let's see. So, just trying to recap what we've covered. So we talked about the opportunities, covered some units there to really look into. I guess let's get to the number one reason people come to Colorado. Let's talk about elk hunt.
Dude, elk hunting. I'm gonna start story time off here before you even ask me a question with elk hunting. Um, I've hunted elk, or I haven't hunted elk. I've put in for elk in many states for a very long time, and just chasing the points. I'm going to use Utah as an example. That point creep just continues to go up and up and up, and I'm chasing that opportunity to hunt elk in Utah. And here in Colorado, I mean, last year was one of the funnest years I've ever had hunting in my entire life. And number one was my elk hunt. I mean, that elk hunt was a freaking blast. If you never hunted elk in Colorado, you're missing out. It is so much fun.
Yeah, like I say, my only experience was when we drew that deer tag. We bought over-the-counter elk tags just to have them on us. And we saw a herd, but that was before the Onyx days, and we weren't 100% sure which side of the fence they were on, so we let them walk. But there were two 5-point bulls in the herd, and so if we'd have known where they were, once we got over to where they were actually on the public side, so it hurt us even more. But if we had known exactly where they were at in relation to the private, we could have had 2 5-point elk to go along with our deer that year. So,
Oh man. Well, I shot a nice 5x6 last year. A lot bigger elk than I've ever shot in Utah, I'll tell you that much. And man, it was fun.
he looked real big on the back of that llama, man.
Dude, he was so. Dude, oh man! And when we shot 2 of them, and my friend that was with me, he shot one, a really nice 6-point. I mean, it was, and we saw elk every single day. We chased screaming bulls. I mean, it's exactly what you want to do. If you want to hunt elk, or you are an elk hunter, you want to be out there with a call in your mouth, pissing those things off, having them come into you. I mean, it is everything that you think about when you think about elk hunting. And I did it with 0 points. Oh man, it was so fun. I'm getting all excited just talking about it.
So let's talk about, I guess, first and foremost, the easiest way for a guy to get an elk tag in Colorado, and we kind of touched on it, but it's the over the counter permits for elk hunting. I guess the biggest thing is, and I'll let Taryn take off from here, but the biggest thing you got to realize with the over the counters is you're going to get a tag, no problem, but you are going to have a little tougher hunt because it's obviously over the counter hunting, and the elk herd is going to be a little more scattered because of the pressure involved.
Yeah, so I'll give you more information on it. So for over the counters for second and third season elk hunting, so you're outside of the rut. It's after the rut has already happened, which is okay. You know, they're
Right.
moving, and you can still find them pretty easily. Um, so second and third season rifle over the counter. Most of the units that are over the counter are west of I-25. There's a few down south that you can hunt on the east side, but I don't recommend it. Um, but there's so much opportunity once you get west of Denver and really, well, I should say west of Vale area. There's a huge chunk of units that are just over the counter. So, and Seth brought up a good point. You know, a lot of people will put in for deer for Colorado because of the reasons that we talked about a little bit ago. But then why not throw that elk tag in your pocket and you're hunting deer and elk at the same time? And again, it's over the counter. You don't have to put in for a draw. You don't have to use points or anything like that. So, and it covers some pretty dang good units. You know, some of the best units, or I guess for density and population of elk, it really covers some of those better units. Up by Craig, Colorado, is an area that holds a lot of elk, a lot of migration territory there. So you know, up that way, up by Winter Park, Granby area, there's a lot of opportunity up there, and then it even goes down south. You know, we talked about that area in southwest Colorado, kind of down by Durango, Cortez area. You know, all that is over the counter as well. So it is very, very easy to obtain a license in Colorado, and it's not just over the counter like, oh, you're not going to see anything. There's a lot of these areas that you're going to see a ton of elk. In fact, the area that I hunted in last year, I hunted it first season, and we could talk about kind of that opportunity, but you could hunt that same area second and third season over the counter. So, I mean, just tons of opportunity, not only just to have a tag in your pocket, but opportunity to see elk and actually harvest one. I wish I had the statistics on how many over-the-counter tags, or actually get a harvest. I probably should have pulled that up, and I'm sure you could find it on the Colorado Parks and Wildlife page. But it's pretty high. We kind of talked about deer and the density and the population. This is a deer factory, but similar with elk. The only issue is you're not really going to find that 400 class elk except for in just a few units in Colorado. We can talk about that in a minute as well. Most elk that you're going to see in Colorado, especially in these over-the-counter units, are going to be, that 200 to 300 range elk. Still nice elk, and it's a blast to hunt them. Even second and third season, it's still fun to be out there and hunting those elk. So that's probably the best opportunity for hunting elk in Colorado.
Right.
Um, a couple of other things that we can kind of talk about, and I did want to share with you guys. So it has the same dates as the deer. Um, so the archery dates are the same, muzzleloader dates are the same. Again, there's that first rifle for elk, and it's October 16th through the 20th this year. Then there's second rifle, third rifle, and fourth rifle for elk. First rifle is kind of that one. That's a rifle season that most people want to get, and so some of the units that are over the counter for second and third are a draw for first rifle. Still, they're great units. You're going to catch those guys kind of the end of the rut, and so that's a lot of fun. And then archery and muzzleloader really hit kind of the heart of the rut here in Colorado. Um, I was going to talk about the like kind of those 0 point units, kind of like what we talked with deer.
Right.
Similar in Colorado, especially for that first season, first rifle. There's a lot of those 0 point units that you can get a tag fairly easy, and even going back to the putting in for a preference point for first choice. So that's what I've been doing is I've been building points here in Colorado and then using my second choice to draw my tags, and yeah, I can draw those tags on those 0 point units pretty easily. I'm a resident, so it makes it a little bit easier than those that are non-resident. But still, there is a lot of opportunity for non-residents to draw a second choice um, first rifle tag and then still continue to build points. So pretty cool opportunities there as well.
Yeah, and to just because you were asking about the success, so Colorado lists them to combine. So second season and third season. So some of these would be over the counter, and some of them would be limited. But overall, you're about 17 to 18% on second and third seasons harvest, and then it bumps up a little bit for fourth season, and then to like 24-25% on fourth season, and then first season you're up around like 25 to 27% success on these elk hunts. And the thing is, you got to remember is elk a little different than deer. They do like to live in some rough country. You can find deer pretty much anywhere, but most of the elk are going to be in a little harder to get to places, which is why you see a little bit of a drop in success compared to deer.
I will say, if you're going to hunt elk in Colorado, be ready to put in the work, because most of them do live in the Rocky. I mean, they live in that Rocky Mountain range. It is hard, and yeah, as Seth pointed out, like last year, I took llamas in, and had I not done that, I mean, we packed in. I think it was 6 miles in up this trail where we could get away from everybody. Took the llamas in there, had our camp set up, and then we hunted from there. But that was just the beginning, just to get to camp. And then we hiked another, anywhere from 5 to 10 miles to get to where we could see elk every single day. So, be prepared to work for it. But if you want to raise those percentage numbers for yourself, put in the work. Make sure that you find the units that are better for you and have a higher density of elk. I mentioned an area, around that Craig area is a great place. There's a few other places down south. There's some good places as well. Find the areas that are more dense with elk. Be willing to get out and scout. I would recommend, if you're coming in from out of state, come in fairly early if you've never been here before. And if you haven't been here before, I'd almost use my first year out here, or even second year out here, really using that as my scouting. Really finding out where I need to be, and being willing to do that. And then yeah, you're going to put a lot of miles on your shoes or your horse or whatever you're on. But I can tell you, if you're willing to do that, your success rate is gonna go way up.
Yep. And it's just like everything. I mean, even if you're in your home state, once you learn a unit, you kind of have a feeling of where things are going to be, what you need to do to kill an animal. And that's going to be the same way hunting in Colorado for elk. You're going to have to learn where they like to be certain times of the year, what they do when they're pressured. All those things will help you be more successful. And that a lot of that just comes down to being able to put in the work and walk further and get into spots that the elk go when they're scared. So
Yeah, we called one of these canyons we went into. In fact, my buddy shot his elk into it. We called it Hell's Canyon. I mean, it was a word I don't want to say on this. If Monty was on here, I'd let him explain it because he could explain it better than I can. But using his language, but
a nasty hole.
it was,
That's all
oh
we
my
need to know.
gosh. And then I had to, so we put all the meat on the llamas to come out of it, but we were kind of weighed down, and we really didn't have any more weight to put on them. I didn't want to hurt them. So I put the head on my back, because my friend, he was a bit older, and I didn't want him carrying it out. So I put it on my back, and oh my gosh, I thought I was going to die that day. I was ready to meet my maker that day because it was so horrible coming out of there. But that's what you got to do to get elk in Colorado. I mean, we got back, so we brought it into camp, took care of it all there, and then we brought it back down to the trailhead where, I mean, that was like tent city. It was crazy how many people were down there, and they were just blown away that we're bringing in these huge
Nice
elk.
balls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're like, what? How did you do? Where'd you find them? Obviously, we didn't tell them where we found them, but we're like, guys, we put in the work. My feet are killing me. I haven't eaten in, you know, 16 hours. It's been a rough go, and so. But if you're willing to put in the work in Colorado, your success rates would definitely go up.
Yep. Um, let's talk about some of the high point units. There's not a lot of them in Colorado, but let's talk about some of the better, harder to draw units and what to expect if you draw a permit like that.
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of the best units, and then I'll give you some of the ones that I think are, at least one that I feel like is kind of a sneaky one that I think people maybe should look at, and actually I think a lot of people are. But again, that northwest part of Colorado, and it's really just a few units. So units 1, 201, unit 2, um, that is where the best elk in the state of Colorado reside. It's amazing. If you've never had a chance to go up there and see those elk, you know that's where you'll find that 375, 400 class bull is up there. The problem is it takes 20 plus, 25 plus points to draw those units, and that continues to creep every single year. People chasing it. So I've actually got a buddy that has enough points to draw that tag finally. He's I don't even know how he is,
Nice.
mid 50s ish. He's been building a lot of
Right.
points for a long time. Um, but that's going to be so cool. So that really is. If you're looking for that pinnacle of elk hunting in Colorado and you're going to build those points, that's where you want to hunt. It's really those 3 units up in that area. Um, Again, I'll kind of give you that sneaky area. I don't even know what the word is. The
Sleeper.
sleeper area, I guess. One area I really like, and I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here because I'm going to give it away. Unit 76, and so that's kind of down like the Pagosa Springs area. Um,
Right.
Really cool area. I've spent quite a bit of time there. And again, I'm shooting myself in the foot here, so nobody put in for the same season that I'm putting in for. But and actually, it's not just 76. Really, around that whole area, um, you're starting to see a bigger and older age class get built up in that area, and you'll find bulls. And I'll just kind of share my experience there. Uh, I've bear hunted there quite a bit, and as I'm bear hunting, I'm really actually just scouting for elk, and it's really been fun to watch the elk herds really in that whole area start to improve. And again, it's not just the numbers of elk, but it's also the age class of elk that we're seeing there. So I would say anywhere 76, 66, 77, 751, kind of all that area, you're starting to see those elk start to improve. So that'd be my sleeper area. If you're not looking to build up 20 plus points, the bad thing about that one is it's still going to take you that probably 10, 15, and as the point creep goes, it may push closer to 20 as the years go on. But a pretty cool area.
Yeah, and then so my only experience with talking units or big elk units in Colorado, I worked with a bunch of guys out of Colorado. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago at this point, and the large majority of them that elk hunted would not shut up about Unit 61. Never stepped foot in it. Don't know the quality of elk on it, but I do know it's hard to draw. But you're up in that 21, 22 points, I think, to draw, and they all felt like that was a great unit to shoot a big bull on.
So I hunted bear there a couple years ago, and there are I'll be honest, I expected more out of that unit because you're right, it's a 20 plus point unit. Um,
Right.
but I saw some pretty good bulls while I was there, and but nothing that I thought was I guess I'm a Utah boy, and
Yeah,
we're kind of spoiled in Utah.
we
So
are.
I was expecting that class of bull when I was over there, and I'd say that it's probably more of like a 320 to 340, 350 maybe
Right.
class bull unit, at least from what I saw. I mean, I'm sure that I did not cover that whole unit, and I know there's things that I didn't see. But I really did expect more for a 20 plus unit. But you're right, a good unit to put in for, and it's gotten a lot of attention. A lot of people are putting in for that one.
Right.
And
Well,
actually,
and the oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and actually, 61, 62, and even 60 right there on the Utah border as one
Right.
that's starting to really go up. So kind of that whole area is really starting to get a lot of attention. And that's for those that don't know the units. That's just south of Grand Junction.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to bring up. You mentioned 62. Some of that dynamic might be a little bit different because 62 and 61 actually split a mountain range.
Mm-hmm.
So everything on the west side is 61 where the bigger bulls are being taken, and 62 on the east side of that mountain range is a low point barrier compared to 61, and a lot more elk are being taken. So there's a lot of pressure pushing the elk back onto 61. I'm sure with just looking at the harvest data, And so it might be a bit of a unique dynamic that maybe some of them big bulls are leaving 61 from time to time and being shot on 62 where they're sharing the same mountain range. Um, and so I just know, like say from years of talking to them, they talked about it like it was our our big bull hunts. But I kind of knew Colorado. Don't get me wrong, they have some great bulls in some units, but being from Utah, we've been spoiled with just giant bulls in a lot of units.
You brought up a good point about, and one thing we probably got to mention about Colorado is, so when you think about Colorado, the elk hunting dates, you're talking September 2nd to November 28th of this year. So pretty much the whole month of September, the whole month of October, and the whole month of November. And so once those hunts start happening, even the archery hunt, these elk start moving all over the place. So they'll jump from unit to unit quickly in a matter of hours. I mean,
Right.
so one unit that you think, okay, this it does take 20 points to do this unit. I may be be able to go into a neighboring unit, and once those elk start moving around, it's amazing. I'll just share a quick experience. Um, I was hunting deer in a unit a few years 2 years ago, where it's not really known for its elk, and I had a elk tag in my pocket. And it was an over the counter unit, actually. Um, and so I, kind of had in my mind that, maybe I might see an elk. Well, we're sitting there glassing one day for deer, and all of a sudden we see it was a huge, I mean, for Colorado, a huge 6 point bull elk. I mean, it was probably a 310, 320 class bull. I mean, he was going Mach 3 through that unit, just hauling balls as fast as he could. And I'm like, where? I mean, he was too far away. And moving so fast, I wasn't even going to take a
Yes.
shot. But I probably should
He
have.
was.
What's that?
No, I'm saying he was doing the elk thing, dude. He was running 6 counties away from whatever had got him riled up.
Exactly. That's exactly the point right there. Is you just never know in Colorado, because that's a lot of hunting right there together, and it's just bam, bam, bam after another. So you never know when in a place you're not supposed to see elk, at least elk like that, all of a sudden, boom, there is one. And then had he stopped, maybe would have. He was on the edge of my range, but we might have torched one off at him. But as fast as he was running, no, wasn't happening. So. Anyways, pretty cool, but yeah, never know what you're gonna find in Colorado.
Yep. Elk have a tendency they're like camels, man. They'll go and go and go, and they have they have a destination in mind, and they're going there, and it don't matter how long or how far they have to go. Sometimes they'll do it.
It's
So
amazing. It's amazing because we were sitting up on this hill, and I mean, we could probably see. Oh gosh, it had to have been at least oh miles. I mean, I'm gonna say 10 to 20 mile range that we could see, and he
mhm.
didn't stop. I mean, he just full bore, just going through. So I'm a runner, and I'm like, man, I wish I had that kind of endurance and stamina to just, I mean, just full force, just going that many miles. It
Yep.
was crazy. So crazy impressive.
Yes. Um, well, let's see. Elk is covered for the most part. I'm trying to think if we're forgetting anything to do with elk hunting. So the archery season dates. What are the archery dates in Colorado for elk?
September 2nd to September 30th. So basically the whole month of September.
Whole month of September. So you're hunting them right peak rut with a bow.
hmm
Pretty cool opportunity there for bow hunters.
And actually, and this might segue us into another conversation, but um, the elk here in Colorado, they like to scream and yell at each other, and that may not last forever because I know what's happened in Idaho, and now you can't get an elk to bugle to save your life because if they bugle, a wolf's going to be on top of them. But so those archery dates are really awesome in Colorado because they are screaming their heads off, and it is so much fun.
Yeah, it's like I say, elk hunting. It's a different ball game to have something that big screaming in your face. It's a pretty cool experience to have.
It is.
Um, you brought up wolves. Do we want to touch on that?
Oh no, I don't want to talk about that. Let's not.
Okay,
No,
we'll
I'm
just
kidding.
we'll just get out of the road right now.
Oh man, we probably ought to talk about wolves. And like I said, I'm going to share my opinions on this. I've talked. You guys can go back and listen to podcasts. I've talked with, um, as high as you can go in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department, JT Romatsky, about the wolves and the introduction. I've talked to biologists and members of CPW since the bill has been passed, and you can go back and listen to those podcasts and what the plans are there, guys. And I'm sure most everybody listening to this podcast, this is not a good thing. I'm really disappointed in Colorado, and it's kind of sad to see what Colorado's becoming. I on the night of the elections, I think I watched the wolf numbers here more than I did the actual presidential number of votes that night, and just blown away that it was even close. I thought for sure that there'd be enough of us in the state that loved hunting, that loved wildlife, that loved conservation, um, enough smart people to know that it was not a good idea. But there's not. Colorado has. Oh, the dynamic is drastically changing, and it's drastically changing by the day. And so the wolf, introduction did pass on November 3rd, and they are in the works of bringing them in. Again, go back and listen to the podcast that I did with Randy Hampton. We talk about what this introduction is going to look like, and how it's going to work. And it's funny as you talk to these guys, they're not fans of this. It is their job, and they have to figure it out. They have no choice but to figure it out. I like to do my job. I have a day job. I like to do it well, and they've now got to figure out how to do theirs well. But you can tell that they're not a fan of it because they know what it's going to do to the deer and the elk herds. And I'm just going to put it out there for you all that hunt Colorado or want to hunt Colorado. It's going to change over the next few years as they start to introduce wolves into Colorado. Hunting is going to change, and I kind of already mentioned it about a few things, but that we talked about the deer numbers and what they're doing with the CWD, moving dates back and decimating the herds that way. Wolves are going to come in and they're going to do the same thing. A lot of people think, oh no, it's going to take time. Look at Idaho. Idaho's a perfect example. I have so many friends, people that hunt there. I've talked to legislatures there, or legislatives there. It's ruined a lot of the hunting up there, and it will do the same thing here in Colorado with both the deer and the elk herd. Elk will not talk. We've loved that. It's been so fun hunting elk in Colorado because really all of the archery season, muzzleloader season, and first rifle season, hopefully first rifle season, the elk I killed last year, he bugled right before I shot him. But they talk, they scream, and it's so fun to hunt them. That will go away. They'll get quiet because they have to survive. And so the dynamic of hunting in Colorado is going to hunting ungulates in Colorado is going to drastically change over the next few years. So really, honestly, if you want to hunt Colorado and experience what Colorado is and has been, you've only got a couple years to do it. And it's sad. It breaks my heart because I am a resident of Colorado, and it's sad to see what's happening here and the decisions that people here in Colorado are making, and it's not for the better. It really is not. And so, I was talking to a person the other day who did vote pro introduction of wolves, and they're like, "Oh, but I'm so excited to see these pretty wolves, when I'm out driving or out walking the trails." I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" For one, you're not going to see them when you're driving. Those things are sneaky as can be. Two, that's the last thing I want to see when I'm hiking because they destroy everything. Not, I mean, sorry, this is a tangent that I'm going on, but you do not want to see them. People have a Disney view of what a wolf is, and it is not that way. They are going to come in here and they will destroy everything in their path, and it'll change the dynamic of Colorado. Sorry about the tangent.
No, so I'll give you some information on wolves in Colorado and some of the news that's happening currently, and then I'll give you a brief opinion of mine on this whole deal on wolves in general in North American wildlife management. First things first, recent article we put up on the website discusses that Rio Blanco County has put a resolution in that, and their hands are kind of tied, but it's kind of slowing the introduction process, at least in that county. They put a resolution in place that they are not open or allowing reintroduced wolf areas to be listed within the county. So essentially what that means is they're not going to allow CPW to put wolves artificially, is what they're saying, introduce these wolves into the county. However, their hands are kind of tied, so they have to say they are open to natural introduction or migration into the county. So essentially, what Rio Blanco County is hoping to do is that a large portion of the western counties band together in this resolution to slow the introduction in their part or their counties of the state. So it would be in a different county that is open to that. Now, that does slow it because it's going to take that much longer for the wolves to spread to those counties. But let's be honest, if Yellowstone has taught us anything, those wolves will eventually spread to those counties.
Yeah, wolves don't
Um,
see county boundaries.
no, no, no. Especially if the elk or habitat or whatever is good. Now here's my issue with, or my whole opinion on the wolf issue in the lower 48. So a lot of people probably don't know this, but originally I was going to go to school to be a wildlife biologist. I was actually at Utah State in their wildlife science program for a couple semesters, and then realized there's no money in it. It is definitely a labor of love. You do not get paid well to be a wildlife biologist. So I ducked out. However, we had multiple people in my wildlife science classes that discussed keystone, what they call keystone predator reintroduction, which is your wolves, your cougars, your grizzly bears, things like that. And to an extent, as a part of the wildlife program, I believed what they were telling me, in that as wildlife managers, we need to believe that we need to manage every wildlife species to make the ecosystem work correctly, because man has altered so much of the area. So that means from the smallest animals to the largest animals need to be managed properly, and they can be introduced onto the landscape if they are managed properly. However, when it comes with predators, because as Terrence stated, people have a Disney view of nature in general, not just predators or wolves or anything. Nature in general, everyone thinks it's lovey-dovey and they all get along. My issue with reintroducing these predators is that politics get in the way of actual sound wildlife management. You see it constantly. They cannot get grizzlies delisted in Wyoming, and every time they do, somebody threatens to sue them.
Yep.
No matter what the wildlife managers tell them, whether it's we need to take some bears off of here or we need to, reduce harvest or whatever, they sue. And they've done the same thing with wolves. I mean, currently Montana, if they pass these wolf hunting regulations, they're going to have multiple legislations or court cases, I should say, going on, trying to sue to reverse it. And that's my biggest problem with wolves. If they were going to actually introduce them, and I'm still up in the air on that, but if they were going to introduce them and they're going to say, you know what, from day one, we're going to be allowed to manage these animals exactly how we want. We have a very strict number that we want to keep. And if they start overkilling our ungulates, we're going to harvest more of them. And they had if this was happening in a bubble and there was no court cases or suing or anything going on, I would be more open to it. But with the way it is currently, and having zero ability to actually manage these animals because there's so much political BS involved with trying to tell a wildlife manager how they need to manage the wildlife, I'm not for wolf or grizzly bear reintroduction into places, because they won't allow people to actually keep the populations where they need to be. It's not 500 or 5,000 years ago where things can roam. If you introduce these things into a place, especially as populated as Colorado, this is the first state you're actually going to start seeing human wolf conflict. Idaho, Montana, their population numbers are a lot less. You put something like a grizzly or a wolf in Colorado, that population of the human population alone is so much greater. You're just amping up the human animal conflict factor, added in with how, I mean, and I guess I'm kind of spinning in circles, but we've discussed it before. Colorado is a deer and elk factory. When there's that much food source, that state's going to become a predator factory too. I mean, they have quality bear numbers, they have quality mountain lion numbers, and they are managing both those species. You're going to introduce a species that you're not going to allow any management on. It's going to create an issue. You're going to have a wolf population explode that's going to be unchecked, and then when it's time to regulate them, there's going to be a bunch of legislation and court cases and things that come up to prevent that from being regulated.
Yep. Very well said, Seth. Very well said. And for the most part, in the other podcasts you'll listen to that I've done with these officials and biologists and managers and things like that, I try to keep a pretty even, you know, response and try to keep my opinions to myself, basically. And I apologize for going on that huge tangent about this. But I do feel like this is going to change. But one thing I feel good about is I do feel like the JT Romatskys and the other biologists that I've talked to, I do feel like they have our best interest at heart. You'll see a lot of people slam the CPW on Facebook groups and things like that. And I don't think all that is justified. I feel like at the core, these guys that I've talked to truly have the same wants and desires that we have. Again, they do have a job to do and whatnot. And the bad thing is their hands are kind of tied. They're handcuffed because of the decisions that are made politically, just like you talked about, Seth. And the thing about wolves is that it'll always be a political issue. If, like you said, if they could be left, if JT Romatsky and his team could be left to manage them how they see fit, and they are wildlife biologists and how they know how to do it, I'd probably be a little bit better and a little bit more comfortable about this. Even though it'd be so hard to manage wolves. Wolves are a different predator than bears and mountain lions, but
Right.
but that's not the situation that we're in. Like I said, their hands are tied. Even JT said that on our podcast that I did with him. If you go back, it's episode number 1 that we did, and he talked about that. That they will be limited. They'll do their best they can, but they'll have some limitations. So it's kind of scary.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's any state that's dealing with a keystone predator like a grizzly or a wolf. It's a very difficult aspect to get anything on the books. I mean, how many times have they rolled out a wolf hunt in Wyoming to immediately have it shut down?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to happen again because Trump released them from the endangered species list, or delisted them. Every state scrambled to do whatever their management plan calls for. But I'm sure they're going to be reinstated, and then you're going to have more court cases come up. So
it's going to get ugly. It's going to get really ugly.
yep.
So, but I don't want this to be all doom and gloom and whatnot. So I would say for those that want to hunt Colorado or do hunt Colorado, let's take advantage of the next few years that we have. Don't let the unknown really affect you too much. I mean, we all kind of have an idea of what this is going to do in the future, and the biologists kind of have the same thought that we do. But take advantage of the next few years that we have in Colorado. Enjoy it and have fun.
And don't take out your frustrations on the CPW or wildlife managers. As Taryn said before, they have to follow what the people of Colorado voted for, and unfortunately they decided, although narrowly, they decided that they want them. So it's not their fault. They're doing the best they can with what they've got.
Yeah, they got to do their job. I mean, just like Seth, You know, if Seth was a mechanic, he only wants to work on Fords. He never wants to work on a Chevy, but he would work on a Chevy if he had to. So sometimes you just have to do something in your job that you don't want to do. Was that right? Did I have
Oh,
that right, Seth?
uh, you're getting me riled up already. I, I'm gonna have a bunch of pissed off Ford drivers. I worked at I worked at
Don't
Ford.
don't do it. No, no, I'm not even gonna let you do it. No. Mm-mm.
No, I'm just saying this is an honest story. I worked at Ford as a mechanic in the shop. I had 6 mechanics, and all 6 of them drove Chevys because they were so sick and tired of working on Fords every day that they could not go home and work on another Ford. So,
So the moral of the story is buy a Ford.
no, please don't.
Oh gosh.
Oh man. So we've covered it pretty well, but what are some other unique hunting opportunities in Colorado for guys that want to go hunt, but maybe don't want to tackle a backcountry elk hunt or a deer hunt or something along those lines? What else can a guy do in Colorado to scratch that hunting itch?
That's the great thing about Colorado. There's so much diversity in hunting here. I'll give you a few examples. Well, a few things that are out there. You know how I talked about, the west side of Colorado, west of I-25 is very mountainous, and yeah, it's pretty rugged. East side is the plains, and so there's tons of opportunity for turkey hunting, upland bird hunting, um, all sorts of different types of hunting that isn't quite as crazy as some of these backcountry elk hunts. I would say one of the coolest things about Colorado, one great opportunity in Colorado is the pronghorn. I think everybody knows my excitement for pronghorn, but uh, it's my favorite animal, Monty. If
Yeah,
you're listening,
he
but
don't let him kid you. Every chance he gets, he loves to talk crap about the old American antelope, man.
oh my gosh. But okay, so with all that being said, though, had such a fun hunt last week on my antelope hunt. I was able to take my
Last
five.
week, you mean last year?
Oh, what did I say last
Don't
week? Oh, sorry, last
Yeah, don't
year.
get people riled up, man. They gonna
Ooh,
think you
yeah.
poaching.
Yeah, I ain't poaching. Sorry, I meant last year. Last year. Um, yeah, took my 5-year-old and my 9-year-old out to go on a really easy antelope. And the cool thing is, so I didn't shoot a giant. I shot an itty bitty little thing, but it was super fun. It chased my truck down like most antelope do. Shot it, super easy to do. But there is a lot of cool opportunity for antelope here in the state, and there's some units that take quite a few points to get, and you can get some pretty nice and good scoring antelope here in Colorado, and it's not going to require you to take llamas into 10 miles into the backcountry. It's not going to require you to really destroy yourself. If you can build up a few points, go hunt these. They're kind of in the lower areas. Um, Again, they chase your truck, so all you have to do is just shoot them as they're jumping in the truck, and it's super easy. But no, I'm kidding. But
Monty's gonna be so
oh,
pissed.
I know it's gonna be. I can't wait to hear from him on it. But that's an opportunity that Colorado has. Another cool opportunity that a lot of people don't think about is the bear hunting. So there's other states that have better bear hunting. I think Oregon has better bear hunting. Even Northern California probably has better bear hunting as far as getting tags and finding a bear pretty easily. But Colorado does make it pretty easy to put a tag in your pocket. Even last year on my elk hunt, I had a bear tag in my pocket. The days crossed over. It was an over-the-counter bear tag, really easy to get. Such a cool opportunity. Just even have that in my pocket. The guys that hunted the season before us said they saw like 3 or 4 bears in the same unit that we were hunting. So I was like, okay, there's a chance I'm gonna find one. So, but even if you don't even do it as kind of like an addition to the hunt that you're already doing, there's a lot of 0 point units that you can do bear hunting, and it doesn't require you to kill yourself. The first year that I moved to Colorado, I hunted bear and had a blast. I mean, it was such a fun time. Most of the areas that I went to, I could just drive to, and I just sat up on the hill and just kind of glassed and found a few bears, and it was cool. So if you're interested in bear hunting, we better not get too far down that because that's another animal that's Disney-fied. But super fun animal to hunt and really cool and lots of opportunities. So So really, honestly, Seth, anything that you really want to hunt, in Colorado, there's so much opportunity. If you want to get crazy and do sheep and goat and moose and chase those points and hunt the rugged high country miserable crap, you can do that. Or you can do the turkeys, the pronghorns, the whitetails, the plains mule deers. I mean, there's just really a hunt for anybody, and if you're whatever you're looking for, you can find it in Colorado. There's so much opportunity.
Right. Great waterfowling if you're into duck hunting and goose hunting, especially in that eastern part of the state. Um, Upland game birds all over the place. I think they've got, if I remember right, they've got prairie chickens even that you can apply for a permit. Got pheasants and sharptails and just a ton of different birds you can chase. Like I say, it's definitely got a lot of hunting opportunity.
And it's gorgeous too. That's the thing, especially the guys out east. If you even want to just get into some of the mountains, I mean, there's just such beautiful country out here, and in a matter of an hour, you can drive from the plains where you're hunting ducks to, you know, 12, 13,000 feet where you're hunting elk. I mean, it's amazing. Colorado's a really unique place to hunt, and honestly, I think it should be on everybody's list. If you're wanting to hunt different states, if you're an out of state hunter, I guess, quote unquote out of state hunter, Colorado really should be on your list.
It is a great place to go. I say I cut my teeth hunting there. It was actually my first big game hunt I've ever went on because at the time they let youth hunters hunt in Colorado before they did in Utah. So my first ever deer hunting experience was in Colorado. So
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Being a resident has helped greatly for getting a lot of the tags, and so I'm definitely blessed to be a resident of Colorado. But it's a non-resident destination as well. We were on our elk hunt this last year, and man, I talked to people from Mississippi, Minnesota, um, Tennessee, Florida, just people from all over the country coming to Colorado to hunt elk. So it's pretty cool. So. Well, Seth, I think that about covers Colorado. Guys, if you have any questions, like I said, please reach out. We'd be happy to help in any way that we can. If we don't have the answers, we've talked to a lot of people, have a lot of connections that we can definitely find those answers for you. But really appreciate you guys. Seth, anything that you want to add to this?
I think we pretty well covered it. It's like I say, reach out if you need any questions asked. I like I say, I haven't hunted it much, but I am the research man. I've been looking into hunting it for quite a few years now, and this year I finally pulled the trigger. But I've looked at a ton of different units. I've talked to biologists. Taryn's talked to them. If you guys need any help or anything, reach out, and we'll see if we can help you out.
And don't go back to our old podcast. Go back to our go to the website. We're always posting articles about Colorado. So if you want any kind of new updates, go to our website, hit the news section, drop down to the western states and hit Colorado, or the west and hit Colorado. You'll see article after article on there, and we keep you pretty well updated. The site is ehunter.com. That's EHUNTR.com. So go and check that out. Also, before we go, want to send another shout out to Vortex and Phoneskope. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate everything that you do for us and for not even just us here at eHunter, but for all the us as hunters in general. You guys make some awesome products, and we appreciate you guys. So that's all I have, Seth. Appreciate you being on, and it's kind of fun being on the other side of this, having you ask me the questions. We should do this more often.
Yeah, it'll work out. We can manage, that's for sure.
Be on the lookout. We're gonna we have Monty and Curtis on here. We've all lived in different states. We all spend a lot of time researching different states. So Monty is the guru of Wyoming. We'll have him on here pretty quick. Curtis is the guru of Arizona and Idaho. So we'll have him on as well and talk through some of the new updates and changes and opportunities in those states as well. So appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share it around, and let us know if you have any questions. See you guys.
See ya.